Hello, scumbags. Today I'm talking Star Wars Confessions. I love Misa some Jar Jar Binks. I want to tell you a story about Jar Jar and my love for the character. I've mentioned on our podcast, Rebel Scum Podcast, that when I first saw The Phantom Menace, my initial reaction was that it was my favorite Star Wars movie. Yes! Even more than Return of the Jedi, which was my favorite up until that point, and now after that point. Interesting, I should bring up Return of the Jedi, which featured the most hated creatures in Star Wars until the Gungans, the Ewoks. I love Ewoks! You know who else loves Ewoks? Anyone that saw Return of the Jedi as a child, which most likely means you. Admit it, if you were at least 13 the first time you saw Jedi, you loved Ewoks and probably watched the cartoons, movies, or at least play with Ewoks toys endlessly. So, we all love Ewoks. Ewoks were clearly created to serve the children watching Return of the Jedi and to sell some toys, much like Jar Jar and the Gungans were created for the children watching The Phantom Menace. Problem was those of us that were children watching Jedi were now in our teens or mid-20s, and those that were adults were now parents. However, the children of those parents loved Jar Jar. The problem was that in the late 90s and early 2000s, children had no voices, and still for the most part do not. But the adults had voices, and voiced their concerns with Jar Jar and his humor to no end. Everyone hated Jar Jar. They hated Jar Jar so much that he was almost entirely cut out of the next two movies. That is, with the exception of him granting our boy Sheev emergency powers. The fan theory of Darth Jar Jar exploded at the end of 2015. People wanted to believe that Jar Jar was meant to be an evil Sith Lord. Now let me start this off by saying, had this theory been fact, I would have been head over heels for it. Could you imagine the bumbling idiot being an actual brilliant Sith Lord? We all know that Jar Jar is not in the original trilogy, which leads me to believe that had Darth Jar Jar been the case, our boy Sheev would have sent his would-be Padawan Darth Vader, aka Anakin Skywalker, to take down Darth Jar Jar. That would have been an epic duel. When it comes to the Sith, only two there are, no more, no less. So there you'd have it. They would have to go down, and Anakin would have to defeat Jar Jar. Again, that would have been epic. If Jar Jar was ever to be a Dark Lord of the Sith, do you really think audience hatred of the character would have stopped George Lucas from fulfilling the character's destiny? Lucas surrounded himself with yes men. He had no studio to please, only himself. The prequel trilogy, love it or hate it, was all him. He had the first and last word. Lucas is too good a storyteller, one of the best in my opinion, to change an entire story arc just because of a few fanboys crying. Anywho, I do not believe any of this. Jar Jar was created for comic relief and comic relief alone. I understand that there is a Reddit thread out there that shows video of George Lucas saying Jar Jar was the key to all of this. But he is not referring to him in terms of importance to the story, but more to the importance of believing in the effect. These effects had never, ever been done before, and whether or not you believed his humor was another part of what George Lucas is talking about. The reality of Gungans being living, breathing creatures all hindered on whether or not you believed Jar Jar. So he was never Darth Jar Jar. But that does not matter. Why? Why, you ask? Because Jar Jar was an idiot, a fool. He was banished by his people, for crying out loud. Who easier to manipulate the mind of than a wounded creature without a home? Everything Jar Jar did was done under the supervision and guidance of Sheev Palpatine, the man Jar Jar trusted enough to eventually grant emergency powers to. Jar Jar created the Emperor! Mr. Banks was nothing more than a pawn in the game of Sheev and the dark side. He was tricked and used much in the same way as Anakin. However, Gungans are weak-minded beings as shown by Qui-Gon using Jedi mind trick on Boss Nass, the leader of the Gungans. If the leader of the Gungans has a weak mind, how mushy do you think the brain of Jar Jar's was? Guys, Jar Jar's goal was to entertain children, create young, new fans for the Star Wars saga, and as they grew older, they'd grow to love the movies. As they got darker and more adult-like, Kind of like a certain Harry Potter kid and his books, and how they started for a little bit of a younger audience and then kind of got darker as they went on. Look, Lucas said at D23 that the inspiration for Jar Jar was Goofy, and when you watch the two, it makes total sense. Yet, nobody hates on Goofy. Perhaps though that's because Goofy lives in a universe where a character of that ilk fits in. But I'd argue that the same to be true of Jar Jar. There will always be a place for poo jokes and clumsy, lovable goofballs. Sometimes, all it takes is thinking like a child, and when you do this, you'll find most things to be much, much more enjoyable. If you can love Wicket, you can love Jar Jar.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.